I strongly believe that science and spirituality, if able to work together and combine resources, could expand humanity in incredible ways. And that expansion is happening anyway. We are evolving into our next thing, but with the help of science and spirituality working together in tandem, I think it could happen much faster. And I've enjoyed in the past discussing the similarities between the two worlds, between people on the spiritual path and people who are on the scientific path, scientists. And the last time I talked about it, I discussed the eccentricities that the two share. And now I want to discuss the limitations that the two share. And the main limitation is the inability to see outside the box, to get locked into an idea of what's true and right, and refusing to see other points of view. And there are many reasons for that, particularly with science, because as soon as a scientist gives credence to another person's point of view, they risk losing funding for their own research. And so funding is so greedily hoarded in the scientific community now that it's hard to expand and to welcome in other points of view because it puts what you believe to be true in danger. So, as always, money, while an amazing way to exchange energy, causes problems when there's an imbalance in that exchange. But to put that aside, I think it's also ego that keeps many people in science from being willing to acknowledge someone else's research as being valid, wanting to come first, wanting to be the one to change the world with their assessments. And yet that egoic need on the part of science limits everything that we learn. And ideally, with the two combined, science and spirituality, we can find a way to transcend those egoic tendencies so that these scientific discoveries come faster because there's less of a need to be the one on top. And some just basic examples of that in science are, first of all of the beliefs that came from Newton and all the things that Isaac Newton taught and the ways that he changed the world. People were locked into that for so long, into what he believed. And I can't think of specific examples right now, except that Einstein took Newton's system and completely turned it over on its head and kind of replaced Newton as the brain of the day. And the reason for that is because a lot of scientists base all of their research on previous research. So if previous research is no longer valid, it invalidates their own research, and it's really, really challenging to come out from under that. And I understand that. But if there was more open-minded access to what Newton had to teach, then maybe it wouldn't have taken so long. Maybe an Einstein would have come along faster. Then there's Gregor Mendel, who is considered the father of genetics. He was completely ignored throughout his entire life. He couldn't get people to read his stuff. His experiments, while difficult to repeat, were pretty much ignored. And only recently have we opened the door to the understanding of the inheritance of traits and all of that. And that's what he perfected. He was a monk in the 1800s, I think. And it took a long time for science to open the door to his research. And then there's going even further back. Galileo. What a perfect example of somebody who was completely stymied by the establishment because his beliefs went against what was acceptable at the time. And it's the same thing in spirituality. People on the spiritual path have certain beliefs, often, I'm generalizing, but often certain beliefs dictate the day. And you can't get people to think outside the box. For instance, I posted yesterday about the idea of positive thinking. There is a chronic optimism that is impeding the world of spirituality right now. There's nothing wrong with being positive, of course, but I posit that there is a different version of positivity than what many people assume it should be. Many people assume it should be happiness, smiling, good mood, only light. Maybe that's not positivity. Maybe positivity is simply being aligned with the truth that is within. And that truth might not be smiling and happy and good moodish. That truth might be sad. That truth might be angry. That truth might be envious. It doesn't mean that you act on those truths. It means that you align with them. You allow them to be a part of your being so that they can be integrated. And then you can move forward into peace rather than positivity and optimism. And getting locked into the belief that you are supposed to be a positive thinker in order to manifest locks you into the inability to manifest because you're not aligning with your own truth. And it's hard to get people to understand that. Most people are like, no, 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 you're supposed to push away this and keep this in and not be this and be this. And it limits us from advancing. And then another example of that in spirituality is certain mediums believe that there are hierarchies in mediumship. That, for instance, all mediums are psychics, but not all psychics are mediums. And what this suggests is that certain gifts are given to the privileged few and others don't receive them. And that creates a priesthood amongst humanity, another priesthood where there's a middle person who connects us to spirit that we need. And if it weren't for them, there would be no connection to spirit. And that is a limiting belief, and one that I think we're slowly beginning to surpass and transcend, but it still exists, this belief in putting people in boxes. And then also along the same lines, a lot of people who are mediums have certain beliefs about what spirit is, and certain beliefs about negative energy and bad energy and demons and things like that. And I'm not taking away from the reality of those things. I don't know. I'm not God. But I do think it's important to open the floodgates of possibility here, to look at what these things could be instead. What if the idea of a demon is not a demon, but rather the external force of humanity's anger that manifests in a certain way and can't take over, can't hurt you because you're a sovereign being unless you want it to, or maybe I shouldn't use the word want, but allow it to. And when it takes you over, it's your rage taking over. And if there's rage there, rather than pushing it down, the key is to breathe with it, be with it, ask God for help in breathing with it, remain present, and allow it to integrate into the rest of your energy field so that you become a wholer version of yourself, allowing all truths to flourish. So those are some ways in which I think scientists and spiritual people are similar and are limited, and the ways in which we could all, including me, I'm sure I have my own limiting beliefs, can transcend these limitations so that we can move forward as a species.